from London, the Marshall McLuhan Golden Probe Show. And now, meet your host, Herbert Marshall McLuhan.
Marshall McLuhan, 21 years professor of English and director of the Center of Culture and Technology at Toronto University, is now taking the Albert Schweitzer Chair at Fordham University, New York.
One of the major intellectual influences of our time.
Says America's Fortune magazine.
The first prophet of pop culture.
Says Britain's Sunday Times.
A Canadian crewman.
Says Time magazine.
Professor McLuhan's special powers have been employed by the Canadian government, the White House, and numerous advertising agencies. Already, at the age of 55, he has become a cult in America. Will it happen here?
Last Thursday, all four of his books, a sort of McLuhan do-it-yourself kit, were launched in Britain by 3 different publishers simultaneously.
McLuhan's subject is communications. But can he communicate to most of us? You, for instance.
Stand by for a McLuhan test probe.
The subject, television.
Television demands your participation and involvement in depth. It will not work as a background. It engages you. In television, images are projected at you. You are the screen, the images wrap around you. You are the vanishing point. This creates a sort of inwardness, a sort of reverse perspective, which has much in common with Oriental art.
Do you agree or disagree with that statement? Did it make any sense to you? Did the McLuhan probe score a hit or a miss?
Later in the show, we'll be launching more probes, the Golden 20.
In order to understand the McLuhan probes, it's essential to know something of his message, his theories.
So pin back your ears and hang on. For McLuhan, he say,
if you teach at high speed, you give and get insights. Just as the regular conversation of savvy people gives not just the facts and information, but also insights.
Do you sometimes think the world is going completely mad? Do you hate living in the 20th century?
race riots, wars, drugs, hysteria, the upsurge of mental illness, political apathy.
Do you feel insecure? Do you think the younger generation has lost touch with reality? Does everything seem to have got out of control? Do you sometimes feel that you're going mad? Are there no values left, no morals, no order?
McLuhan's message begins.
Innumerable confusions and a profound feeling of despair invariably emerge in periods of great technological and cultural transitions. Our age of anxiety is, in great part, the result of trying to do today's job with yesterday's tools, with yesterday's concepts.
We drifted into the Industrial Revolution with our eyes blinkered, and look what happened. That revolution, and the one that's happening right now, is like comparing a hand grenade with the H-bomb. In a way, the Industrial Revolution was about our physical well-being, food, clothing, work. This one is about our minds.
Lend me your mind, and listen to one of McLuhan's more important principles.
All man-made material things are extensions of the body or some specialized part of the body. For instance, the evolution of war weapons begins with the teeth and the fists and ends with the H-bomb. Clothes and houses are extensions of our biological temperature control mechanisms. The wheel is an extension of the foot, the book an extension of the eye. Today, after more than a century of electric technology, we have extended our central nervous system itself into a global embrace by television, radio, etc., thereby abolishing both space and time as far as our planet is concerned. We are living in a global village.
President Kennedy is shot, and the world instantaneously reels from the impact of the bullets.
Any of these little gestures I make are all tentative probes. That's why I feel free to make them sound as outrageous or extreme as possible. You have to push an idea to an extreme. You have to probe.
Remember, the big question is, does Marshall McLuhan, the expert in communications, communicate? Subject of probe number 1, James Bond.
The James Bonds of our time are mythic ways of telling us that in the electric age, man has returned to the status of the hunter. The hunter has dealt with his entire environment as a totally unified thing. This is a natural course for man in the electric age. Man, the hunter, the new electric man, is a man who crosses boundaries and who tries to deal with the total human environment as a single unit.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, the Volkswagen car.
Since TV, there has been a nosedive of the visual sense and an upsurge of the tactile. Take the popularity of the Volkswagens. It's because the Volkswagen is a wraparound car. It's not to be looked at, it's to be put on like a pair of trousers.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, Renaissance art.
The viewer of Renaissance art is systematically placed outside the frame of experience. You are a detailed observer, uninvolved, looking at a vanishing point. A piazza for everything and everything in its piazza. It's the Renaissance legacy.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, Twiggy.
Femininity has moved off the photographic glamour cake altogether into an all-involving tactile mode. Twiggy is tactile because she's just an abstract outline, all-involving something to be completed.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, baseball.
Baseball is much too linear, much too obvious and predictable a game to interest modern man. It's not surprising that attendances are falling. Houston's new Astrodome might well be the salvation of baseball. Its indoor environment creates a whole new depth of involvement. Down there, under that roof, it's like being inside a pinball machine.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, the Cavern Club in Liverpool.
British Prime Minister Wilson visited the Cavern Club in Liverpool where the Beatles got their start, thereby making it a museum, a storehouse of human values, a cultural blood bank.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, the planet Earth.
The sudden resolve to tackle our own junkyard as a work of art is a hopeful indication that, at long last, we are prepared to look at our environment as something we are capable of formulating, patterning, shaping.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, the space capsule.
The space capsule has to include the planet, as it were, to be usable. The capsule is the first completely designed human environment.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, diplomacy.
Television, as I said earlier, has introduced a new dimension into politics. And frankly, most of us don't know what to make of it. Old dogs have to try and learn new tricks, or try to do so. It isn't at all easy.
Our leaders, perhaps, can be excused if they look back with longing on, say, the 18th or 19th centuries, when they could carry out most dangerous social operations with complete detachment. Today, with the populations of both villages looking on, the art of diplomacy becomes very difficult to practice, and the strategic withdrawal almost an impossibility. Politics offers yesterday's answers to today's questions.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, sex.
Already young people are shocking their elders by casually conversing on matters previously considered top secret. And the hippies, those brash pioneers of new life patterns, have reverted to the communal living of the Middle Ages or the primitive tribe. It is not uncommon to find a goodly mixture of them sleeping in one room. Those who envisage wild orgies just don't get the picture. Most hippies are not hung up on sex like their elders. To them, sex is merely one of the many sensory experiences. It is available when desired, therefore not so desperately pursued. As romantic love fades, so may sexual privacy.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, guilt.
The new feeling people have about guilt is not something that can be privately assigned to some individual. Now, it is something shared by everybody in some mysterious way. This feeling is an aspect of the new mass culture we are moving into, a world of involvement in which everybody is so profoundly involved with everybody else, and in which nobody can really imagine what private guilt can be anymore.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, God.
The Newtonian God, the God who made a clock-like universe, wound it up and withdrew, died a long time ago. The phrase, God is dead, applies aptly, correctly, validly to the Newtonian universe, which is dead. The ground rule of that universe upon which so much of our Western world is built has dissolved.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, the drug LSD.
I seem to have a stomach like a caterpillar. I must concentrate just a little. I don't have any more inhibitions. I shall start talking fantastic rubbish. Lovely hair. I think I'd try and exaggerate that.
LSD releases people from ordinary acquired verbal and visual habits. It knocks out the old partitions within the self, allowing new connections to be made. It promises instant, condensed, and total experience, which is what people want now, instead of step-by-step, rational, sequential ones.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, the Negro.
A lot of this oral culture I'm talking about is found now in the Negro world. The reason they are so far ahead of us in the arts is, quite simply, that they haven't trained their visual sense to the point of suppressing the other senses. In music and dance, Negroes are ahead. It's interesting to note that all literate cultures sentimentalize all primitive cultures.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, art.
Art is anything you can get away with.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, the Beatles.
Youth instinctively understands the present environment, the electric drama. This is the reason for the great alienation between the generations. Today, youth lives mythically and in depth. Myth means putting on the audience, putting on one's environment. The Beatles do this. Young people are looking for a formula for putting on the universe. Participation, mystique. They do not look for detached patterns, for ways of relating themselves to the world a la 19th century. Electric circuitry is orientalizing the West. The contained, the distinct, the separate, the Western legacy are being replaced by the flowing, the unified, the fused.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, education.
Education in the formal sense will vanish. Classrooms are already obsolete. The planet itself is now a little school. The environment is already programmed with more information than any classroom. All the world a sage. It's like being back in primitive times again. Then nature was education. You learned from things around you. Nowadays, schools are just an interruption in a child's education.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, success.
To be a success in any form of entertainment or politics, you've got to put on your audience. De Gaulle puts on the whole of France. That's why he's a success. Kennedy put on a teenage image to the panic of his older rivals. That was what America wanted and still wants. Abe Lincoln put on the public of his time, the new frontier public. It never existed before or since, but it did then. President Johnson hasn't got a corporate image, so he can never be a success. His image is not acceptable. It belongs to some other country at some other time and not America today. Mr. Wilson also lacks a corporate image. He also lacks vitality, which all corporate images must have. Hitler had it, de Gaulle has it, Mr. Wilson hasn't. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying it happens. Every successful person works by feedback. The responses he gets back conditions his public image. If an entertainer or politician is not getting any feedback, he's wasting his time.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, Vietnam.
We live in an informational environment, and war is conducted with information. Television news coverage in America of the war in Vietnam has been a disaster as far as Washington is concerned because it has alienated people altogether from the war. Newspaper coverage would never have had this effect because newspapers don't involve. Television does involve and creates absolute nausea.
Hit or a miss?
Subject, the electric age.
When we invent a new technology, we become cannibals. We eat ourselves. we eat ourselves alive since these technologies are merely extensions of ourselves. The new environment shaped by electric technology is a cannibalistic one that eats people. To survive, one must study the habits of cannibals.
That was the last of the golden probes. Did it hit you or miss you? One final word from your host, Marshal McLuhan.
Just because you shout fire, it doesn't mean that you started it or that you like fire.